Then I'd like to call the next speaker on the list, Dr. Manish Bapai. I think he's going to talk about odd management of odd irregular foreign bodies. No ball.
Good morning, everybody. I'll share my screen. Is my screen visible, sir?
Yes, Manish, you can carry on.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll be talking about odd irregular shaped foreign bodies. The first case, I'll just give a background since these are heavily edited videos in favor of time. The first case is a young patient who had a trauma while working in stone quarry and had a large stone foreign body. He had no perception of light, but still the foreign body needed to be removed. While the second case was a patient who had trauma, bike accident actually, and had broken glass, and there was a glass foreign body which was missed on ultrasound as well as on CT scan pre-operatively because of a very dense, thick vitreous hemorrhage which was there. And the patient was referred to us after primary wound repair was done elsewhere. So the first video, after the sclera was sutured on the nasal side, and the lensectomy was done, the vitrectomy was done, and foreign body was released of all the vitreous attachments, and then the sclerotomy on temporal side was opened. The claw forceps was used to lift the foreign body from the retinal surface and held in mid-vitreous cavity, while other hand was used to make a limbal incision, which is almost 180 degrees. And then the superior rectus forceps was used to remove the foreign body from the limbal incision. At the end of this was a very large foreign body, as can be seen. This patient eventually ended up with phthisis. He never regained perception of light and eventually ended up with phthisis bulbi. The second patient, here the vitrectomy was done, peripheral vitrectomy is done. We can see it was densely adherent. It was very dense vitreous hemorrhage, and it was organized because of old trauma. It was almost 3 weeks old. There was this glass foreign body. So again, the forceps was used to lift the foreign body from the retinal surface and was brought onto the iris. It was left on the iris, and the prongs of the claw forceps were retracted before taking it out of the sclerotomy. And then it was again inserted through the anterior chamber, and the foreign body was grasped while on the iris surface and then removed from the eye. This patient had fairly good visual outcome. I think he had 3 by 60 meters vision after the recovery of the eye. Thank you for opportunity, Dr. Raja and VRSI.
Thank you, Dr. Manish. It's a very nice demonstration of the usage of the claw forceps. I think I'd like to congratulate on you designing a very nice forceps, which is one of the big lacunae was there in managing non-magnetic foreign bodies of large size. So I'd like to ask, what is the maximum diameter of the opening of that lips of the claw?
Sir, it opens up to, so the prongs are made of nitinol. So without having to force them open it, they open up to 8.5 to 9 millimeters. But since the nitinol tends to, it can change its shape a little, you can grasp larger foreign bodies. So the stone foreign body that I removed was almost 11 millimeters. And as you can see, it was very odd and irregular shape. So despite that, the prongs did not, they were not damaged. We could reuse it.
Great. Do you have any other design forceps which designed for other purposes? Like, this is the only thing you have, or do you have any other designs which are pending or in the pipeline?
So as of now, nothing else in the pipeline, but I'm sure there are various different types of forceps which have been designed now. The basket type of forceps are also available, which can be used to remove such large foreign body. I think there is one designed in Arvind Eye Hospital itself, which can also be used for such foreign bodies.
I'd like to ask Dr. Preetham, how does he manage large non-magnetic foreign body. Does he have any other techniques which we could like tips to remove such very large non-magnetic foreign bodies?
Yeah. First of all, great management of these IOFBs with your claw forceps, Manish. When it comes to glass IOFBs, one thing which I have found useful, these IOFBs usually have a smooth surface. So, I use my silicon tipped cannula connected to active extrusion. It seems to grasp the foreign body pretty well. So with that, you can get it into the mid-vitreous or anterior vitreous cavity and then handshake it directly from the limbus where you made your excision. You don't want to handshake it from the other end because it will fall down again. So you could handshake it with a forceps which has a serrated edge and then bring it out. So this is one thing which I have found useful.
If I may, you can use this technique with claw as well. And Dr. Sangeet Mittal has a lot of videos where he has used claw to remove even the non-magnetic foreign bodies, where since the diameter of the claw forceps is smaller than the most of the magnets that are available, you can use this bimanual technique even with claw forceps to remove it. You can lift the foreign body from the retinal surface using your cutter in one hand and then use the claw to grasp the foreign body.
Thank you, Dr. Bape, for that wonderful presentation and some nice discussion coming out of it. We now go ahead and will ask the next speaker, that is Vinod Kumar. So Vinod will present on a post-trauma retinal detachment.
Thank you so much, Vivek. So is my screen visible and am I audible?
Yes, carry on.
Yes, Vinod.
So I'll be presenting this case of a 30-year-old male. He is in fact a student of our institute only. He's a high myope, -10 diopter OU. He had had a trauma and underwent corneal tear repair in his right eye. Though he retained a very good visual acuity of 6/6, a large corneal tear had been repaired by one of my seniors in institute only and had traumatic aniridia as well. And the patient was aphakic. Now, this is what he presented with. He presented to us with decrease of vision in the same eye for past 1 day. The visual acuity was finger counting close to face. And he had a large superior 210-degree giant retinal tear. So this is what I did. It was in fact, not very difficult surgery because PVD was already present. So I continued with my vitrectomy. Once the vitrectomy was complete, I shaved off the remnant edges of the retina, which were there in the periphery. After that, the retina was rolled superiorly and PFCL bubble was injected into the retina. We noted that the patient had a myelinated nerve fiber also. Once the PFCL was filled up to the brim, a thorough laser 360-degree, 5 to 6 rows of laser were done. And now subsequent parts were challenging, but I decided to go ahead with the air fluid exchange in this patient. Air PFCL exchange, and once air PFCL exchange was complete, I could see there's small amount of subretinal fluid noted in this compartment, but I did nothing and left the patient with C3F gas tamponade. So this is what happened over a period of time. The retina remained attached. In fact, patient retained 6/6 to my surprise in this patient. Probably macula was not detached to begin with. And now it's been 2-year follow-up. The patient has been doing very well. So the challenging in such a patient were visibility, aphakia, aniridia, and the large GRT. The patient had 3 factors for a high-risk PVR, that is high myopia, post-trauma, and a large GRT. And what I wanted to discuss was how to go about direct PFCL siliconal exchange in such patient. Because there is no lens iris diaphragm, so there are chances of anterior chamber filling up with silicone oil. And what would be the choice of tamponade in such cases? Because there's no iris lens diaphragm again, I was able to get away with gas in this particular patient, but how to go about? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vinod, for that wonderful presentation. I would like to bring in Dr. Pramod Bhinde here. Dr. Bende, in such cases, especially the ones which are aphakic, the way he showed right now, would you prefer gas or would you swerve towards usage of an oil?
Well, I think I mean, yeah, it's a wonderful video. Let me appreciate that surgery was done extremely well and very gentle handling, I would say. And he was lucky enough that macula was attached and superior GRT that helped out. Yes, I won't say it's a clear consciousness whether oil or gas. I think most of us feel this type of eye is dealing with particularly large tear, particularly high myopia, and as you rightly mentioned, post-trauma, there is a high risk of PVR. You generally tend more on, rather I would say, on the oil side rather than gas. But I think it's a very common sense thinking because there's no iris, no lens, and probably chances of obviously oil cornea contact and already had an injury, corneal injury. He took a chance. Unfortunately, it worked out. That's what how I would feel. And whether to do oil PFCL exchange directly or PFCL air and then followed by silicon, I think it's a individual perception rather than the way you are trained with. Both are okay as long as technically and as long as you are good enough and confident enough, both way are okay. Okay, so probably we are all trained with directly PFCL and silicon oil exchange. I would do that. Probably I would say you cut off one step of having a air inside in between, and chances are there if you do properly that subretinal what he had a localized fluid, you can minimize that risk. But and another advantage is like reflexes what you get with air, and chances of PFCL sometime vaporization and residual bubble you can miss when you are doing with the air. But you can debate on either side. I would say the way you are trained, the way you are comfortable with, either way is okay.
Dhananjay sir, can I ask you a question? Shukla sir? Then he's not there. Okay,
Saravanan?
Yeah,
he's there.
Yeah. Can I make a point?
yeah, please.
Actually, in all these cases, we just keep the PFCL for 10 days and remove the PFCL. No tamponade after that.
That's exactly the question I want to ask.
Yeah. So you just keep the patient supine for 10 days with PFCL, and at the end of 1 week or 10 days, initially we have been replacing with gas, but later on we thought, okay, we'll just leave with air alone. They're doing well actually, because the attachment of the retina with PFCL is very great actually after 10 days.
So Dr. Babu, is that your practice pattern in all
Yes.
cases of GRT, or is there a specific subset?
Exactly, exactly. So we have two groups where we are doing silicon oil and another group where we are doing only the PFCL.
It's good, sir, because Steve Jobs has also described it a midterm PFO of 2 weeks, and he has found great results. But the only thing is the inflammatory action which might occur with retaining this PFO for a long time, but it is doing well. But what about in LVP? I heard they're doing a double sandwich technique. What about it, Dr. Vivek? I heard somewhere.
I think Dr. RN, yeah, he's there. I think Dr. RN has done a few cases.
Yeah, I do sandwich with PFCL and silicone oil where there is extensive PVR. I need both superior and inferior tamponade. But recently also I had to do one patient where the retinectomy was up to the arcade actually. But overall, I would say I hadn't heard about the retaining the full PFCL inside and removing it later on. I don't know if the patient doesn't come for a few weeks. Is there any toxicity that you have seen? Even in my patients, there is always a risk when I do the PFCL oil sandwich. The other problem which I face with PFCL oil sandwich is they don't come on time, then the oil and PFCL can mix actually, making the PFCL viscous and difficult to remove. So I will have to try out these PFCL cases only.
Rather, we don't discharge the patient actually for the same danger. So we keep them in the hospital only for a week, because I don't want to miss them and end up in any MLC.
Shukla, sir.
Dr. Shukla, can you quickly come in? You want to make a point? Dr. Shukla, you're not audible.
Am I audible now?
Yes, you are.
So I'm sorry. So the thing is, Naresh actually stole my words. Yeah. So but the only catch is if there is an inferior GRT, I would be more happy using PFCL as a midterm tamponade. If there's superior GRT, I would probably go with Vinod or use oil actually. So that's the only difference I make. Vinod, actually, there's one more thing which Avneet does actually, you know, making a plus with the with the threads actually to make a false pupil, and that prevents the oil from coming to AC. So that's the answer to a question about avoiding the contact of oil with the AC. The beauty of PFCL, Raja, is that the PFCL does not emulsify. It does not cause as much corneal toxicity as silicone oil. I've done about 40 cases, and I'm very happy with my results actually. And as Naresh said, actually, it's actually a cleaner procedure. And in Ireland, actually, there is an entire group doing only PFCL now for GRTs. Thank you.
Gopal, I'd like to ask a question.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Yeah, Gopal is there?
Yeah, I'm there.
How important do you think is trimming of the anterior edge of the GRT? Do you do it regularly in your practice?
Yeah, I do it regularly. Basically, the proliferation which is going to occur, the ischemia that it is going to cause later, the possibility of a neovascularization, peripheral neovascularization, anterior hyoidal proliferation is there. So generally, I trim it. I have never left large areas of anterior tissue there.
How do you manage with the slippage? What do you think are the percentage of cases which you end up with slippage, and how do you manage if it slips?
Generally, I have been using oil in most of the patients. And one thing is, don't put buckle in those patients. Number two, I generally have the PFCL till up the brim, and I do a PFCL silicone oil exchange. And if it is very mild slippage, I do not actually do anything about it. Very mild slippage in the periphery, I would not actually mind it. But if it is more, then probably you may require to position the patient and only PFCL, just like Naresh was telling. We'll position the patient with PFCL and plan for a removal of PFCL in within 2 weeks' time.
Sangeet sir, you have any comments on this case or the follow-up chat which we had? Okay.
Can I make a small comment? Quick one. Yeah. You know, I have had the observation over the years that many times the posterior edge of the GRT is rolled up intrinsically. You know, and although you cauterize it, that rolling up causes these islands of pockets of SRF when you finally do the PFCL oil exchange. So, you know, I've observed that cauterizing those edges, you know, and probably chopping off those small rolled up edges and leaving a straight edge at the end helps, you know, for a better results.
Exactly. It's critical that you leave a flat edge at the end of surgery because the chance of recurrence would be much lesser.